I've been standing behind that velvet rope for 14 years, and I still haven't figured out how she does it. Not the walking, not the waving. Anyone can learn that. I mean the thing she does with a dress where she puts one on, steps out of a car, and suddenly 40 photographers who have seen everything forget how to breathe for about 2 seconds. 2 seconds, that's all we get, that's the whole job. Let me take you back. It's a Tuesday in September 2021. Central London. Rain earlier, so the pavement outside the Royal Albert Hall has that Black Mirror shine to it, and every light in the city is doubled, once in the air, once in the puddles. Cold enough that the older photographers are wearing fingerless gloves. There's a smell of wet wool and burnt coffee from a van parked round the corner, and somebody's radio is playing tinny jazz nobody asked for. The barriers went up at noon. By 6, the crowd is 4 deep. You have to understand what a crowd like that sounds like. It isn't cheering. Not yet. It's a low, restless hum, hundreds of people talking to strangers because they're too excited to stay quiet, and every 40 seconds somebody's phone flash goes off at absolutely nothing. A tourist near me, an American woman with a folding umbrella she'd clearly bought in a panic, kept asking her husband, "Is that her? Is that her?" every time a black car slowed down. It was never her. It's never her until it is. The Royal Guard, the real ones, the ones on duty at these things, not the ones you see in photographs, do not move during any of this. That's the part people never quite believe. Not a shuffle, not a scratch, not a glance at the noise. The rain runs off a bearskin the same way it runs off a statue. I've spent a decade and a half watching a rope line, and I've watched them longer, honestly, because there's something about a man who can stand that still while a whole street loses its mind around him. Anyway, that night was the world premiere of No Time to Die, James Bond. And there was a rumor going round the pit, there's always a rumor going round the pit, that she was going to do something. Now, if you don't follow this world, let me explain who she is on a night like that. Catherine, Princess of Wales, Duchess of Cambridge back then. And the thing about her, the thing that drives fashion editors slightly mad, is that she doesn't shock you. Ever. That's not her instrument. She isn't the woman who wears the dress that gets written about because it's outrageous. She wears the dress that gets written about because you can't stop looking at it and you don't entirely know why. I've been photographing her since the beginning. Since June 2011, when she turned up at a children's charity gala in a blush Jenny Packham covered in rose-colored Swarovski crystals with layered mesh at the neckline. A Swarovski crystal-covered gown at a gala dinner for the children's charity ARC. She was brand new to all of it then. 29 years old, 4 months married, and already the flashbulbs went off like a wave breaking. And here's a detail nobody outside our world clocked. She wore that same blush gown again 5 years later, in 2016, at a gala for a children's hospice appeal. South China Morning Post WWD. She does that, she keeps things. The month after that first gala in Los Angeles, she wore a pale lilac Alexander McQueen soft pleats through the bodice, cinched at the waist, paired with a clutch and glittering platform sandals by Jimmy Choo. That dress had a second life too. 10 years later it reappeared at the 2021 Earthshot Prize Awards, and I remember an American colleague squinting at his screen, zooming in, going, "Hang on, hang on. I've shot this dress before." South China Morning Post WWD. He had in another country, in another decade, when she was a different person and so was he. That's the whole trick if you want to know. 42 gowns. Everyone counts them. Everyone ranks them. And they all miss it because the gowns aren't 42 objects, they're 42 markers on a road, and if you lay them end to end, you get a life. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Back to that wet Tuesday. Back to the rain and the jazz and the American woman with the panic-bought umbrella. The cars were arriving, not hers. You can tell. There's a certain kind of arrival where the crowd noise goes up and a certain kind where it goes quiet, and quiet is the one you wait for. At about 7:10, it went quiet. Here's something I've never been able to explain properly to anyone who hasn't stood in a press pit. You always hear the shutters before you see the person. It travels down the line like a spark on a fuse. The photographers at the far end, closest to the curb, they see first and their cameras go off, and that sound comes rolling towards you at maybe 20 feet a second. KKKKKKKKKKKKKKKKKKKKKKKKKKKKKKKKKKKKKKKKKKKKKKKKKKKKKKKKKKKKKKKKKKKKKKKKKKKKKKKKKKKKKKKKKKKKKKKKKKKKKKKKKKKKKKKKKKKKKKKKKKKKKKKKKKKKKKKKKKKKKKKKKKKKKKKKKKKKKKKKKKKKKKKKKKKKKKKKyou. Brace your elbow. You stop breathing because breathing moves the lens. The door opened. And I want to be honest with you, because I've told this story maybe 200 times and I've never once managed to land it. A lot of us just didn't shoot for a moment. She came out of that car in gold. Full gold. A sequined column gown by Jenny Packham that caught every single light on that street and threw it back, and a floor-sweeping gold cape behind it, moving slightly the way water moves. A sequin-drenched Goldfinger column gown with a floor-sweeping gold cape from Jenny Packham for a James Bond premiere in September 2021. She'd matched the film. Not the way a fan matches a film, the way somebody who's thought about it for 6 months matches a film. Goldfinger. Bond. The joke was there for anyone who caught it, and she never once looked like she was making a joke. Dressed like a duchess. The internet more or less came apart that night. Dressed like a duchess. The bloke next to me, 40-odd years in the business, wire agency man, hands like leather, he lowered his camera. I looked over. He was just watching. "You're not shooting," I said. He said, "In a minute." The American woman behind the barrier had both hands over her mouth. Her umbrella was on the wet ground and she hadn't noticed. Somebody had started clapping, and the clap spread the way the shutters had, all the way down the line, and it wasn't a fan clap. It was the other kind. The kind you do when something is simply, undeniably well done. And through all of it, 40 feet away, the guard on duty did not move. Not a flicker. Rain still coming off him. The most photographed woman in the world walking past in a river of gold. 1,000 people losing their heads, and this man stood exactly, precisely as he had stood at 4 o'clock that afternoon when the street was empty and nobody was watching him at all. I got my shot of her. Of course I did. It ran everywhere. But the frame I keep, the one that's still on the wall of my flat, is the wide one. Her mid-step. Gold, him in the deep background, absolutely still. 2 kinds of discipline in one photograph. Because that's what those 42 dresses actually are, and it took me years to work it out. They look like glamour. They're not. They're discipline. In 2018, pregnant with her 3rd child, she walked a red carpet in a deep green Jenny Packham with a plunging neckline and a flowing skirt, cinched with a black ribbon, and wore emerald jewelry with it. In 2019, she chose a white one-shouldered Alexander McQueen with floral embellishment, and wore jewelry that had belonged to Princess Diana. My face hunter, my face hunter. Read that again. She wore his mother's jewelry, on a night when 900 lenses were pointed at her chest. She said nothing about it. She never does. I stayed until the carpet cleared that night. Most of us did. There's a strange flatness afterwards. The lights come down, the barriers get folded, and the street becomes an ordinary wet street with chewing gum on it. The American woman picked up her umbrella. She was crying, a little bit, the way you do when you're embarrassed about it. Her husband was laughing at her kindly. She said to nobody in particular, "I didn't think it would feel like anything." That stayed with me. Because here's the last thing, and then I'll stop. Everybody counts the gowns. 42 of them. The Ivory McQueen from the Diamond Jubilee Tour that came back out for the BAFTAs in 2020. The one Sarah Burton designed for her 2012 Southeast Asia tour honoring the Queen's Diamond Jubilee. The black gown with the delicate floral pattern and the off-the-shoulder neckline in 2017. The cascading white Jenny Packham with the embellished shoulders at the 2022 state banquet. The first state visit hosted under a new king, with the lovers not tiara. The ruby gown, burgundy sequins and beaded floral embroidery at a Buckingham Palace reception that December. The pink Gucci at the 2026 BAFTAs, with earrings that once belonged to Queen Elizabeth. My face hunter +4. And the one that tells you everything. She took her 2019 white one-shoulder McQueen, added a single draped sleeve and black opera gloves, and wore it again to the same awards in 2023, finishing it with earrings from Zara. Women. Zara at the BAFTAs, in front of everyone. That's not a fashion choice. That's a woman telling you something without opening her mouth. I've photographed her in gold and in mourning black. I've photographed her when the whole country was celebrating, and I've photographed her on nights when the whole country was worried about her. And she came out and stood in the light anyway, and gave us our 2 seconds and smiled. People think the dresses are about being looked at. They're not. Anyone can be looked at. The dresses are about standing still while the world goes off around you, which is the exact same thing that man in the bearskin was doing 40 feet behind her, in the rain, with nobody watching him at all. Same job, different uniform. That's what I'd tell you if you ask me why any of it matters. 42 gowns, 15 years, 1 street. She never once looked like she wanted to run.